Have a good meeting.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
It is 4:34 on March 23rd, 2021. This is Gary Lamel. We are calling to order a emergency meeting of the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs. And I would ask Commissioner Blackwood to go ahead and read the notice of meeting statement if she has that available where she's at.
Yep, I can do
Thank
that.
you.
A meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of the March 23rd, 2021 Emergency Commission meeting was distributed March 23rd, 2021 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. Okay. The proposed agenda was distributed out. Does anybody have any modifications, changes, additions, subtractions to that agenda?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Rawlinson. I would like to add that I believe we have some individuals who would like to speak to the commission regarding the issue at hand. Therefore, I would like to request a motion. I would like to make a motion that we have public comment on this issue, whether it be those who requested to speak and or those who have signed on to the call representing our House and Senate and Governor's office. If possible, I would like to see that we give them each at least 5 minutes to speak so that they can clearly explain their reasoning behind their comments.
So
that is my motion.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess my only question with regard to that is if we do it in our public comment rule as it stands right now is for 3 minutes. I don't know and the purpose of that obviously is just to have sort of open input on any subject. I don't know of any restriction that prohibits us from allowing, if we have a specific topic saying you want to talk specifically on Senate Bill 533, just inviting people to speak on that. So that's going to give us more flexibility if we want down the road to be able to say, we'll hear for 5 minutes from each of these people. I'm worried about what our policy is versus what you're asking for on that.
Mr. Chairman, can we make that specifically on Bill 533?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I say if we open it up for public comment, technically under the policy, that can be on anything, right? That's right.
So this one needs to be specifically about Senate Bill 533, and
right.
I'm asking for 5 minutes per person.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can give 5 minutes per person if we wanted, although that's bumping up against our time limit.
Correct.
If we wanted.
Well, I think we can ask
the existing thing. So
I think we can ask our speakers to try to limit it and keep it below that if possible. Yeah. But I'd like to see us at least give them 5 minutes.
Okay. So understanding that, do you still want to make a motion to add public comment at this time?
Yeah. Well, would those be public comments though where they have requested to speak?
I don't think they would fall under the category of our public comment as we define public comment in our policies.
Okay.
That would be my opinion.
We would just allow these individuals to present information.
Right, like we often do when we have specific topics. We'll invite subject matter experts to come in and give us their opinion.
Well, that's fine. I would just like to see us try to keep that time limit to 5 minutes a person, please.
David, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? This is David Thomas. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on exactly sort of where we're going. I'm thinking this is sort of picking up from the last time we had our full meeting, a regular meeting of a week ago, and the issue came up at that time that 533 was apparently read out of subcommittee, and then it's coming up in front of full LCI. And the question was not even at that meeting whether we were for or against the bill, which in my opinion, we don't need to be for or against it. The only issue I had was if there are consequences or issues that had not been discussed in subcommittee that needed to be sort of aired out a little bit, and maybe we had information. We did have information, and Rufus was, as a matter of fact, he had previously sent out a document asking for comments from some of the providers and was getting back comments of how this could affect their service and how many people might be impacted. And we did get that, at least a preliminary on that on Monday. Now, that prompted me and some others, I think, said, well, maybe we should discuss. But Chairman and Commissioners, I don't think necessarily pro or con. I think the issue, as far as I was concerned, was full disclosure and making sure there were no unintended consequences, which is the bane of all legislators, that they find out something later on that, oh, I didn't realize that it was going to have such and such an impact. That's the only question that I had in my mind. Had we adequately informed the legislature of information available to DDSN, and I don't want folks to think, at least from my perspective, that they're speaking to try to convince us to be for or against the bill. That's not an issue in my mind. Is that, or the chairman, maybe that is the reason for the meeting to some degree, but disabuse me of a misunderstanding if I've got one.
I'll be honest with you, David. I wasn't going to call for the emergency meeting or made the motion for it, so I don't know what the intent. That's something that we need to decide in this process. With regard, just if we can stay focused before we even get there. I mean, we have to get an agenda set, right, to move on to that item. So right now we've got. I want to make sure we get Stephanie's motion resolved if she's making a motion at this point in time to add public comment. So Stephanie, did you withdraw that motion?
Well, I don't, Chairman, could I speak to that? I don't mind public comment. I just want to make sure that what they're commenting on is what we're talking about. If we're talking about just receiving information to pass on to the legislature or whoever's interested, period, I just don't feel like it's exactly our position to get involved in saying yes or no to legislation. That doesn't make sense to me. But if it's going to have an impact that the department knows about, then we should be able to pass that on. That's all I'm interested in. I haven't, and in fact, I sent you something that I sent all the members something, and the governor's office something also from Barry and myself that basically says, look, potential unintended consequences, but we're neither for nor against the bill. Commission's taking no position for or against the bill. The department doesn't have a position for or against me, at least, when I sent it, which was this afternoon. But I'm just saying that if people get on thinking they're trying to convince us to be for or against the, I don't think we're going to vote on that. That's not before us, really, is it?
Again, David, we don't have an agenda yet, so I don't really know. I can't really answer that until we at least set the agenda, and then once we get down to that item agenda, I think we can have everyone clarify exactly what their intended purpose is today, whether anybody's going to make any motions to do anything or just receive information. That's why I'm just trying to get through the agenda. I think we have to
hear from these individuals. I feel like we need to hear from these individuals, and we need to determine at the end of listening to them if we need to move forward and make that decision.
Okay. Again, I'm just trying to get the agenda done right now. That's it. So
I will withdraw my motion as long as they are allowed to speak.
Gotcha. Okay. And I think that's going to be determined when we get to that. So as proposed, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move that we approve the agenda as written.
Okay. Can we have a second?
Barron.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the agenda as proposed, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. The agenda is approved as provided. Okay. So the one item on the agenda pursuant to the request that was made is Senate Bill 533. And we need to decide how we want it. I'll be for those who made the motion to have the emergency meeting, is it just to receive information? Is it to make a motion? Is it to receive information and see we need to make a motion? For those who actually made the motion for the emergency meeting, I think, Robin, that might have been you initially. I'm not sure 100%. I have to go back and look at the motion.
No, I don't think I made the motion.
Okay, then maybe it was Stephanie.
I think I was.
Okay, David, then I'll let you speak as to what your intent is. I think we know, but just formally at this point in time, if you want to let us know.
Yes, sir. I got it. May I speak?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. But my intent was to receive information to actually get confirmed that 600 individuals had been identified from providers that had sent in their response to Rufus's request for information, that we should discuss that and decide sort of what to do, if anything, but certainly not to say yay or nay to the bill. I mean, I think the intent of the bill is probably very good, but if there's a question about unintended consequences and how this might affect providers and individuals that are using provider services, it's not costing us anything. Providers are paying them something, but it's a different system. System's been in place for 20 years, and so my concern was, well, how does this rock the boat on that? And that was it. It was neither to be yay or nay on the bill. It was to see if maybe, I don't know, perhaps somebody could come up with a suggestion for an amendment, but that may not work. I really don't want to mess with what they're doing. I'm not trying to interfere with what is going on over there in the legislature. What I'm trying to do is say, look, I knew for 28 years of being in the legislature, I always wanted to know as much as I could. Therefore, my request was for information to fill us as a commission in on the potential outcome, and that was it. And then we share that as part of full disclosure. That was it. That's the only angle I was coming from.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, David. Was there anybody else that wanted to weigh in on what they wanted to see out of this meeting? So with that understanding that basically what we're trying to get, if I understand it, you tell me if I'm wrong, David, that basically what we're looking at, the question here is for the commission to receive information about the consequences of the bill, if it's passed.
Yeah, consequences in terms of how it might affect programmatic issues with DDSN that have been in place for years and years. And I think that, so Rufus sent out the questionnaire, and hopefully he's available to talk to us about that. If not, then all I can say is that we have received information from a day or so ago that a number of people had responded back, and we could discuss that for a minute.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'd also like to request, because I did agree to an emergency meeting, but I would also like, because I don't feel like we've heard what the solutions that are being proposed by organizations such as that have written this bill. I would like to know what their solutions are to the problems that are being seen. If they have solutions to those, I think we need to hear those, because I believe they do have some solutions offered. And I don't think we got to that in the meeting the other day, because that person that was trying to present it was cut off. And that's the reason I asked for an additional time, so that person might be able to finish their presentation.
Right. So I guess that's very legitimate, Stephanie, but the question becomes, does that have to be done on an emergency basis if we're not intending to make any motions, make any requests for amendments or anything like that to the legislature? If we're receiving information,
I don't think we can. I don't think that. I agree. We need to get information, Gary. But I don't think we can rule out anything until we hear both sides of this. I don't think we can say, "Oh, we're not going to recommend an amendment, or we're not going to do anything until we hear the whole story," which I don't think we've heard.
right? But what David's talking about at this point in time, what he requested was not for the whole story, it was just for the issue of the consequences intended or unintended, right?
Well, that is not what I intended.
Okay. All right. So your intent is to receive more general information as far as advocacy for or against the bill.
That is correct.
Okay. So that's two different positions that we have here with regard to that. So I think we need to define, does anybody else have any opinion on either one of those, or with regard to some other purpose of this meeting?
Well, I think David articulated the position correctly that we should have, or not take a position, but the purpose of this meeting is he articulated it best, because we don't even have all the information from Rufus that we need in order to make any kind of a decision anyway. I don't even know, is Rufus even in the room?
Yes.
Do you have the results of the survey completely, and do you have a report on the survey and all that yet? You don't,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir. The survey closed out on Friday, and Provider Network was very responsive because we didn't provide a lot of time. And so this meeting was impromptu. So this is, again, a quick narrative that I want to thank Rob for pulling the information together. But we had 18 providers with sub-minimum wage certificates to report. Basically,
Well, hang on one sec, Ruth. Before I don't even want to go so far as to start receiving that information. I'm trying to define exactly what our purpose is here. This is all I'm trying to do today. And I think we might need to take a vote on that, because what Stephanie wants and what David wants are very different things from this particular emergency meeting. And I think we need to define, if we're having an emergency meeting, exactly what are we looking to get.
All right, I'll stand by on with other staff, and we'll be here.
Thanks, Rufus. Not to cut you off, but that's where I'm at right now, and trying to organize this thing.
I can't understand how we can receive information from one side of this bill and not be willing to listen to the other side. I mean, obviously, we're going to have one side from the providers, but we need to listen to both sides to determine if the information we're giving is legitimate.
I agree 100% with that. It's just a question about whether we're doing that today. I agree. If it was possible to give more than 100%, Stephanie, I think I'd like to hear that, because I don't feel like I've got enough information to make any sort of decision at this point in time. I'm just questioning whether we need, again, with the time limits that we're dealing with, maybe I'm wasting more time trying to get this, but it's hard for me to conduct a meeting when I don't know exactly what we're going for.
Wasn't there a Senate committee meeting occurring on Thursday, and we felt like we needed to meet before that meeting for some reason? Was it to hear both sides, or was it to hear what
was that what it was?
It was to do what David articulated, as far as I knew. I mean, he called the meeting for that purpose before Thursday to articulate what he just said.
And Chairman, could I offer a middle ground somehow? I mean, what we do or what we hear today, and I don't want to stop anybody from being heard. I mean, I think it's a good thing to lay the thing out. It's obviously going to, if it passes, and I'm sure it will, I mean, it's a good bill, I think. I think the intent is very good. The only question is, are there little hooks to it that if we fail to talk about this in any way, or communicate it, I should say, we are talking about it. If we fail to communicate it, that, wait a minute, there could be unintended consequences. Guess what? If there are unintended consequences, guess who gets the blame about 6 months from now, or a year from now, or whatever. So this is only trying to be full disclosure. And Stephanie's point, I think, is well taken. But I'm not trying to make a decision on the bill one way or the other. I'm just trying to say, are there issues out there? And apparently there are, but we might not have enough time to do that. Maybe we should set a time when we have, lay out a couple of hours to sort of air the whole thing out. But I'm wide open to do even limited conversation now. But I'm not going to support anybody's. If there's a motion to say we don't, or for the bill or not for the bill or whatever, I'm probably going to vote against it. I just don't think we should interfere unless there's something astonishing. We should interfere with what the legislature is doing, except by way of providing information from the department. And we've gotten some, and if there's a contrary opinion, like, oh, but we're going to take care of that. We got it under control with the task force that's built into the bill. That's fine. I mean, we can hear that, but I don't intend. I'm not going to vote for. Oh well, in that case, I'm voting for the bill or against the bill or something like that. I just want to get information out. If there's something that's going to rock the boat on an established system that's been in place for, I understand, for 20 years or so, I just think that should be, fully. And hey, it was probably our fault for not getting to. I blame myself. I'm legislative chairman for not getting to the subcommittee what could have been a question mark. So this is my fault, and I'm sort of making up for my mistake. So I'll take the blame for that, and I apologize to the writer of the bill, to the subcommittee chairman. I've apologized already and said, look, I should have been there, or we should have had that information. So, but I'm open to listening to whoever they want to have. I just think it's, or maybe this would help providers that might be listening in. I don't know.
Can I ask a question of Kim? As far as the positioning of the bill, is it at a point where if we don't get input in by Thursday that we can't get any input in, period?
Well, the bill is going to be heard in full committee on Thursday, and if it's found favorable by the committee, then it will be sent to the Senate for their consideration. So there's always, if you all want to have any input, there still is opportunity with it going to the full Senate.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I don't see anything wrong with gathering information from both sides. And going back to what David is saying is that armed with the facts, it puts us in the position that we want to be in. So I've heard information centered around making sure that we have the correct facts. So I could go with that.
Yeah, I'd like it as well. It's just a question of how it's delivered to us. And then, so I think if we're in a situation where, it doesn't sound like anybody's comfortable with trying to give input without full information to whatever extent it needs to be, that at worst we miss the opportunity to do it at the committee level, which obviously is significant, but
very significant, yes.
But the other option becomes inviting people to get us the information either in a written form or to schedule time or do it as a subcommittee. Have the subcommittee receive the information, which might be a good way to do it as well. I hadn't even thought about that, David. I appreciate you bringing that up as a possibility. Where we want to go with this right now, and that's really number one. So I think the first question is do we need to get anything done? Is there anything that we feel comfortable doing before Thursday, given the amount of time that we have, given that Ed's got to get off in about 15 minutes?
Let's go with the information, gather the facts. I don't think we need to vote today because we won't be able to internalize enough after gathering the facts to be able to vote. So information, facts.
Okay. Anybody else? And again, feel free to make a suggestion here, guys. I'm trying to figure it out myself.
I believe we need to get information from all sources.
Agreed. How do you want to do that, Steph?
The ones on here, and I think that Rufus ought to be able to provide the information from the providers. I can provide you information from 2 providers who called me today. I can also provide, I think that those on the call and those who've requested to speak ought to be able to provide us with information. And that's all we do is accept their information and listen. I think that's important that we listen. And I'm sorry that it may go longer than 20 minutes or whatever. But this meeting will be recorded. So any commissioner who can't stay on the whole time to listen, I think could sign off and then they can go back and listen to it. And then we can make a decision later if we feel we need to.
Would you be comfortable, Stephanie, as opposed to them having to say something to us right now, them providing it to us in writing?
I think that's fine as well. I think we ought to be able to get that information from every source.
Okay. Does anybody else have any input on that?
I agree with what Stephanie's said.
Commissioner Miller, agree. Commissioner Miller.
So my next question is do people want to do that via them orally making statements right now, or would you, or do we want to get that in writing, which includes Rufus getting us information on the results of the survey, right?
Yeah.
From all sources.
I would like to hear that information on the record.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be on the record so that we have it so that it's in a format where it's recorded and we know that everyone has read it and heard it or has the ability to read and hear it. That includes those out in the community that are maybe listening to this that don't know both sides of this issue.
Okay.
I agree.
All right. Well, then I guess entertain a motion with regard to taking oral information today.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor of that today, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. All right, then let's hear from Rufus. Rufus, so as I understood it, we're going with 5 minutes. Rufus, going to start off with you. Try to limit it to 5 minutes if you would, sir. Just give us the results.
That will not be a problem.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you tracking time?
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you.
We had 32 providers respond to our survey. Of those providers, 18 indicated they do have a 14C certificate and do employ individuals with disabilities at sub-minimum wage levels. Of the 18 providers with sub-minimum wage earners, they reported they currently employ approximately 838 individuals, working on 119 contracts with businesses. Pre-COVID, those numbers were well over 1,000 with over 200 contracts. These providers employ approximately 205 staff to support individuals who are working in sub-minimum wage work. 9 of the providers report that they have a plan to transition those individuals to minimum wage jobs at some point, which is very important. Of the providers that we've talked to verbally and communicated to be a part of a work group on this topic, they all have a commitment to see all individuals advance towards competitive employment and earn minimum wage. So that's an important point on the part of our provider network. The providers also reported they plan to make approximately 200 additional referrals, of former sub-minimum wage workers to vocational rehabilitation if the 14C vision is prohibited. They report that voc rehab, and this is from the provider network, has not been very successful in the past in accepting and serving these individuals. And so again, they're trying to balance maintaining work opportunities with also maturing their capabilities to support individuals at their level of abilities. We have formed a work group. The first meeting is scheduled for tomorrow of agencies that have 14C certificates. All are positive, and we're willing to work with other groups to include ABLE as well as Disability Rights to be part of this work group, because again, when you talk to providers, they recognize the importance of this bill and also the importance of ensuring that people with disabilities are treated fairly, in the eyes of the law, but at the same time, maintaining opportunities for competitive employment for a cohort that need a little bit of special accommodations to perform their jobs. So that concludes my report.
Does anybody have any questions of Rufus with regard to that?
Are you saying vocational rehab is exempt from this bill if it passes as it's written?
No, that was a statement from one of the respondents to the survey.
So they are not exempt. Vocational rehab will not be able to use this system either, correct?
Well, any agency employing a 14C certificate. So this is BDSN providers, and our network of providers are the majority of agencies that employ 14C certificates, but it could expand to other groups to include individuals with alcoholism and other disabilities, part of the law.
If this doesn't pass, right? Because if it passes, 14C is gone, correct?
Yeah, if this bill passes, there'll be a 3-year phase-out period of 14C.
That's right. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was finished.
All right. Any additional questions for Rufus? So would anybody want to see that in writing, sort of the summary, the results?
Yes, I'd like to see us put that out in writing, please.
Yeah, Rufus, if you could prepare a summary for us of that,
No problem.
I think it would be useful to have that in writing as well. Thank you. And just distribute that out. And we can post that up as part of the posting with regard to this meeting as well.
Okay, will do.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, so we'll continue on to those who requested to speak, and hopefully they're all listening in. So again, we are not seeking at this point in time to have anybody advocate for or against a vote on our part, supporting or not supporting. The sole purpose of this is for people to give us information on possible negative consequences of the bill with regard to employment of our consumers, and also any plans that are in place that might mitigate such negative consequences. Is that a correct statement that I just made? Anybody disagree with that on the commission?
That was perfect.
Okay. All right.
That's good.
Okay. So hopefully everybody heard that. So please limit your comments with regard to that. Christy, is the plan to call these people?
Christy had to leave, so it's Colleen, and I'm gonna.
Okay, I apologize, Colleen. I couldn't see who's there in 251. I apologize. Okay, so let's go ahead and call the first speaker, which would be Kimberly Tissot.
Okay.
Hi, this is Kimberly.
Kimberly, this is Gary Lamel. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Gary, how are you?
I'm doing okay. So we've got you on speakerphone here. I don't know if you were watching the meeting as well.
Yes.
Okay. So with regard to strictly the issue that we're dealing with here today, which again is not an advocacy element, as more of a factual information with regard to, because I think we all know 100% that you're behind the bill. With regard to any sort of negative consequences, do you have any information that you might be able to provide us with regard to that, or with regard to any mitigation that may be in place to address that? And just, again, this is not public comment. So what we've done is we're trying to limit it to 5 minutes. And I'll be timing you, and we'll let you know when your 5 minutes is up. Okay.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay. Floor is yours.
All right, thanks. And I'll just go ahead and just reintroduce myself. My name is Kimberly Keystone. I'm the president and CEO of ABLE South Carolina. And then, as mentioned, last time, our organization is run and operated by the majority of people with disabilities. So we are very aware of the ins and outs of what disability discrimination looks like. And personally, I am a person with a disability. I've lived in the state for 40 plus years, and I also have a little boy who is 11 who also has a developmental and intellectual disability. So when we started working with Senator Shealy on this bill, we used a lot of evidence. We had data, reports, we had studies, and evidence that sub minimum wage is not only a civil rights issue, but limits the individual's potential. So overall, we have to step back and realize that people with disabilities have rights. We have the Americans with Disabilities Act that passed in 1990, which protects us from employment and pay discrimination. There continues to be a loophole with the Section 14C of the Federal Fair Labor Act that passed in 1938, you guys. So this is over 83 years of practice. This practice does not only harm, but also discriminates against people with disabilities. The law was established at a time that there were no opportunities available for individuals with disabilities. And then, as we know since then, there have been protections put in place for workers with disabilities, and there's been other additional laws. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973 was the first law that passed. Then it was the Americans with Disabilities, and most recently the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that does not consider 14C employment to be real employment. And I did hear some comments about vocational rehabilitation. They do not provide sub-minimum wage, nor does South Carolina Commission for the Blind. They stopped that practice many years ago. And I do just want to kind of give an overview that the problem of non-employment for people with disabilities is a very important one. But Section 14C, sub-minimum wage provision, is not the way to solve that problem. while Congress has not repealed this, what I call a dinosaur of a law, the great state of South Carolina can, because we do have proof that in 83 years of its existence, of being able to pay people sub minimum wage under 14C, it is very clear that sub minimum wage is not only failing the disability community, but also limiting them. So enough is enough of this. When this bill passes, this bill would take effect in August 1st of 2024, which allows 3 years of a transition plan. That transition plan would allow us to work and develop a plan to ensure people with disabilities in our state are being paid equally. There would be a task force that would be developed. And so the task force would include Disability Rights South Carolina, which is formerly known as Protection and Advocacy, ABLE South Carolina, University of South Carolina Center for Disability Resources. There would be 2 members who are currently employers paying sub minimum wage. So that means there would be DDSN providers. There would be 2 current or former employees with a disability paid sub minimum wage, because their input is why we're here. South Carolina Department of Employment and Workforce, South Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. There would be South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs, so you all, South Carolina Vocational Rehabilitation, the South Carolina Developmental Disabilities Council, and the Commission for the Blind. And so there would be all of the great minds that are dedicated to employment for people with disabilities in our states to come together to form a plan that would work for our consumers. I think we all have to step back and just look at how far the United States has come with disability rights, but having a disability does not make someone less than and should not be the criteria to allow our community to be paid less than minimum wage.
Kimberly,
when I talked with you,
Kimberly, you have 30 seconds. Okay.
All right. Well, when I wanted to come to you guys because I thought that the organization, that BDSN, would be 110% behind this bill because of using evidence to support making your decisions. And so I was kind of caught off guard last time, and I do think that this is something that follows along with your mission. So thank you so much for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you so much for taking that opportunity and for staying within that time limit that I asked you to. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the next person will be Beth Franco with Disability Rights of South Carolina. And again, while this call is being made, I just want to emphasize to those who speak, again, we're not asking you to advocate on behalf of the bill. That's not the purpose of this. This purpose is to discuss possible negative consequences with regard to employment and what things are in place to mitigate those negative consequences. It's very limited.
Right. Now, and for the record, I don't really think she did that except to say
and Barry, we're not going to get into that right now. We're going to try to proceed this. So I appreciate your opinion on it, but I don't want to go there right now. Beth, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. This is Gary Lamel. Have you been watching the video that we've had broadcast?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've been listening in. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to give you 5 minutes. Again, understand this is not for general advocacy for or against the bill, but specifically to talk about potential negative consequences and anything that's in place to mitigate against those. It'll be 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
I'll be keeping that time, and I'll let you know when you've got about 30 seconds left, okay?
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Beth. Recognize
good
you.
afternoon, commissioners, and thank you for allowing me the chance to speak this afternoon. My name is Beth Franco, and I'm the Executive Director of Disability Rights South Carolina. Disability Rights South Carolina is a private nonprofit, and we are mandated by the federal government to protect and advocate for the legal, civil, and human rights for people with disabilities in South Carolina. We are the protection and advocacy system for South Carolina, and we work with people to help them understand and defend their legal rights. This includes their right to competitive and integrative employment. We are here to speak about Bill S-533, which is the joint resolution that would prohibit the use of Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standard Act of 1938 that continues to pay sub-minimum wages to people with disabilities. Just to put it in context, more than 30 years ago, the passage of the American with Disabilities Act, otherwise known as the ADA, many South Carolinians with disabilities basically lacked opportunities for real work, and they would spend their day in segregated environments doing unskilled work for virtually no wages. Many of these individuals would languish in settings for years, supposedly being prepared to work and never moving into meaningful employment. Disability Rights South Carolina published a report in 2017 called Unjustified Isolation, Unwarranted Assumptions, Why South Carolina's System of Sheltered Employment Services Needs to Change. And as part of that report, we had monitored during the 2014-2015 local disability and special needs boards and private providers in South Carolina. And we interviewed over 69 individuals who received services through these facilities. What we learned is that the average length of time that individuals participate in these programs was 7.3 years. We also found common characteristics that included that only individuals with disabilities were working at these facilities. We found workstations that were similar to segregated education classrooms rather than typical workplaces. We found that tasks were often limited and repetitive with no opportunity to learn new skills. The structure of the career preparation was questionable given the length of time individuals spent in these programs, and there were concerns about the participants' limited perception of their own capabilities. These segregated programs raised serious questions about the state's compliance with the ADA's mandate that individuals with disabilities receive services in the most integrated environment. They also raised serious questions about the compliance with Medicaid's new rules regarding home and community-based waiver services. Since this report was published back in 2017, we are concerned that there have not been significant changes to these work programs in South Carolina, and that the system of segregated workshops does not currently comply with ADA 504 or the final rule. In their ruling on Olmstead versus LC in 1999, the Supreme Court of this country stated that the recognition of unjustified institutional isolation of persons with disabilities is a form of discrimination that reflects two judgments. First, institutional placement of persons who can handle and benefit from community settings perpetuates unwarranted assumption that persons so isolated are incapable or unworthy of participating in community life. And second, that the confinement of an institutional setting severely diminishes the everyday life activities of individuals, including family relations, social contacts, work options, economic independence, educational advancement, cultural enrichment.
Ms. Franco, you're at the 1 minute mark, and I'm going to stop you a little bit early.
Okay,
I know you have.
I'm almost done.
Hang on. Let me finish, Ms. Franco. I understand you have a prepared statement, but it's really not addressing what we've asked. I mean, we have.
Actually, it is, because it all ties into, and I'm one of the things I do want to address, because this report did address subminimum wages. It addressed sheltered workshops. I do want to also add that there was a recent report, Subminimum Wages, Impacts on the Civil Rights of People with Disabilities. This was issued last year, in January 17, 2020, and that was issued by the U.S. Commission of Civil Rights, which called on Congress to repeal 14C of the Fair Labor Act, a provision that permits employers to pay the people with disabilities less than minimum wage. So all of this does tie in together. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Okay. So one of the reasons we're supporting this bill is that there is a transition. Kimberly spoke to that. We are not looking to just suddenly flip a switch and everything is going to change. There's a process of planning and transition and a phase into community, integrative employment, paying fair wages by 2024. And we support that So
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm happy to share any reports that the commission would like to read and understand better as it relates to the laws that protect people with disabilities, and I'd be
Yes,
happy to speak to you at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Thank you. Again, I'm just going to say this to everybody out there, and I appreciate the information we received from last few speakers. But I will tell you, we don't need to hear a history lesson from everybody about how we got here. That's really not what we're focused on. And again, I know people may have prepared statements, and I'm not trying to take away from that, but we would really appreciate people would focus on the specific question that we ask, as opposed to generally laying out why this is a good thing. That's not at issue. What we need to know is the impact on our consumers and what specific mitigation may be in place. Okay? Everybody on the commission agree with that? Am I stating
Yes, you
that
certainly
properly?
did, and they both just said the same thing, which we already knew.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay. All right. So next, I'll ask if you will give a call to Ralph Courtney of Tri-Development Center of Aiken. Ralph.
Hello, Ralph.
Hey, Ralph, this is Gary Lamel. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing fine, Gary.
That's good. We've got you on speakerphone here with the public meeting. Have you been able to follow along with the meeting?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Certainly.
All right. So what I would ask, Ralph, is that that you give us feedback on the specific issue that we're dealing with in terms of potential negative impact to the consumers and the mitigation as far as job loss and things of that nature. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
That's not going to be easy, but I will attempt to do so.
Thank you.
Okay. Just a couple things that I would like in the bill, if that's permissible, so that we can see any mitigating impact, would be I'd like to see a 1, 2, and 3 year study mandated that shows what has happened to those individuals who are now making sub-minimum wages. What did happen to these people as a result of the law, if it passes? I think it should focus on the financial and emotional impacts on these individuals. It should also look at the number of hours in which the impacted individuals are engaged in gainful employment. Some places where I've been where they do not any longer have 14C, they have an individual who may go out twice a week, and they love going out, work in a industry. They work for maybe an hour a day, maybe 2 hours, but only a couple times a week, and they have a staff member with them that works long enough to make sure that the employer gets their money's worth. The staff member doing most of the work. Well, that's only a small portion of the individual's day. It doesn't lead to, it can for some individuals, but it doesn't necessarily lead to where people feel like they're really a part of a team. There are so many other advantages for the individuals, and I'm talking about those who are extremely slow, their disability. Some people have profound disabilities and are capable of making more money than I make, okay? But what is happening to that population? We need to know who are utilizing the sub-minimum wage rule. I would like to see what's happening now before a law is passed. What are these people who could be out doing other things? Why are they making less than sub-minimum wage? We should have known this all along. It's supposed to be something that's followed. No one should be making sub-minimum wages that is able to make more than that. No one. The government has failed. The government has allowed the system to be abused. It was created in the law to create opportunities for individuals with disabilities, knowing that some of these individuals, not because of discrimination against people with disabilities, but because some of them, their production would be slower than what minimum wage would be. That's why it was created. And we need to see how is it being used? And nobody in this state has studied how it's being used. Is it being used in the way it should be used? And instead, it's just throw it all out, and by throwing it all out, I'm afraid that there's going to be a significant negative impact on people's self-esteem, their dignity, their feeling as being producers in our society, as opposed to being people simply cared for. I do not want them to all end up, or a large percentage of these individuals to end up making nothing and feeling simply cared for. Cared for, that's nice to be cared for, but you want to be part of a team. You want to do things. You want to feel productive. And these people should be proud of themselves. Many of them put forth a lot more work than do our other individuals. And none of this is being measured. It's not for everyone. Most of the individuals we serve in our day services aren't making sub-minimum wage, but we do have, I think it's 72 individuals who over the past year have made sub-minimum wages. And part of that's because we're just not smart enough to find the right button or piece of equipment that they could use to increase their productivity. But hey, society is not there yet. I'm sorry. It's just not there. Okay. That's it. Okay. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir, very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. The next person is a gentleman by the name of Abe Dendy, who's not listed himself as representing anything other than himself. So I do have some concern that he is probably going to be more focused on the advocacy side of things. But we can give him a call, and my intent is, since he's not representing any organization that would have conducted any studies or anything like that, to see exactly what he's wanting. So if we can give him a call.
Hello.
Mr. Dendy.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, this is Gary Lamel with the Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs. You had requested to have some input with regard to what we are discussing today. Understand that we are not looking for any input that has anything to do with advocacy for or against the bill. We're simply trying to collect information with regard to potential negative consequences to the people who are so employed and the mitigation strategies that are in place. You did not list down any organization that you belong to, so you're just speaking as an individual. Is that correct?
You're right.
Okay. So you understand that we are not interested in general advocacy issues. Is there anything that you have information-wise to present to us with regard to the negative possible outcomes and mitigation strategies?
You see, I got something right here. My interested in you right here.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
And about to put it up now. I started in a shelter workshop right after high school and stayed there like 27 years. Over a year ago, I was able to translate into community employment work and at local sheriff department, and done so great job, and will figure on the sheriff's department favor several times, getting a good job in the community allowed me to do more financial stable and independent to move in community, live independent on my own.
Okay, Mr. Dendy, thank you for that information. I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Okay. The next up is Julia Martinelli with Accessibility. We could call her.
Hello?
Julia.
Yes,
Hi, this is Gary Lamel with the Commission. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing just fine, thank you. Have you been able to watch
Great.
the broadcast or listen on the
I
broadcast?
have, but I just stepped out at the end.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so what we're just focused on basically a single issue, okay? We're not looking for anyone to advocate for or against the bill in general. We're just hoping that you have some information related to either possible negative consequences towards consumers or any mitigation strategies that have been discussed or in place to minimize those negative consequences. Again, it's not a general advocacy. We don't need a history lesson of how we got here. We really need to know sort of impact elements. Does that make sense to you?
it does make sense. It
Okay.
does. And I'm
Okay.
hoping that
Great.
I'm hoping that the commission will do just that. Look at the consequences. I certainly could sit here and talk about being the mother of a child who's 33 years old, but I really just want to urge the commission to look long and hard at this subject matter.
Okay. And we are trying to do so. Was there anything specific with regard to those elements that you were wanting to address with us?
I did want to say that most, from what Mr. Britt provided, a lot of the providers have a plan to move people with sub-minimum wage into employment opportunities at least minimum wage. So since it's already in everybody's thought process, I think it's just figuring out the details. So I wanted to urge the commission to please be open-minded and to help us figure out the details, because I think it's an important step forward. That was it.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that input.
Okay?
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, next is Ann Warner with the Women's Rights and Empowerment Network.
Hello?
Ms. Wren.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye. This is Ann Warner, yes?
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. A lot of Ms. Warner, I apologize.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I understand.
This is Gary Lamel. I can hear that you were listening in the background. So hopefully you've been following
Yeah,
around
I'm going
as
to
far
turn
as
that down.
the sort of information that we were wanting to receive from you with regard to this, just in terms of negative potential consequences and mitigation strategies that we may need to be aware of. So would recognize you if you could address those items. I would appreciate it.
Sure. I will do my best to pivot and to comply with the request of the commission, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I will be brief. My name is Ann Warner. I am the CEO of WREN, the Women's Rights and Empowerment Network. We're a statewide nonprofit organization, and we are in support of this bill, strongly in support of the bill, and we defer to the expertise of Kimberly Piso from Able South Carolina and Beth Franco from Disability Rights South Carolina on the importance of the bill for people living with disabilities in South Carolina, and support all the comments that they have made. We just did want to offer up a couple of resources in terms of looking at what other states have done. The National Council on State Legislature has cataloged what other states have done to end the practice of paying people with disabilities a sub-minimum wage and the phased approaches they have taken. And there has been a study by the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights that was published in September of 2020, so just a few months ago, on the impact of the sub-minimum wage on people with disabilities, and found that the state transitions from 14C are promising and illustrate it is possible to make this shift. So we want to strongly encourage the commission to consider the ways in which other states have made this work, to strive towards a state where all of our workforce is paid fairly and equitably for their work. It's really important that South Carolina sends that message and creates a more fair standard for all of our workers. And I also just wanted to mention, I don't know exactly how the technology is working on that end, but Mason Thomas, who works for Senator Shealy, is trying to make comments. So if you don't have him in your queue, if you could make if you could find an opportunity to recognize him, I know he would like to speak and offer his expertise on this topic.
Yes, Mr. Thomas is on the line with us today.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to offer some comments. And again, appreciate the work of the commission, and strongly in support of our efforts to move forward towards this change in law in South Carolina.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And again, I apologize about getting your name, about calling you Ms. Wren as opposed to referring to you by your name. So, last up is Tyler Rex from Thrive Upstate. If we could call him, please.
This is Tyler.
Tyler, Gary Lamel, DDSN. How are you doing this evening?
I'm fine, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. We can hear you just fine. We've got you on speakerphone as part of the meeting that we're holding. Hopefully you've been able to listen into the broadcast.
I have, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So if you could just address your comments specifically to the areas that we've talked about potential negative consequences and mitigation strategies, we'd be very grateful. And so I recognize you.
Understood. Yeah, thank you so much. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Tyler Rex. I'm the Executive Director of Thrive Upstate here in Greenville. And on a personal note, 2 of our 4 children have disabilities, so discussing how they will spend their working lives is very important to me. Out of respect for your request to talk about mitigation strategies, I will cut straight to the chase and share with you that we made a strategic priority to move our employment efforts into integrated settings. And we recognize to do that, to accomplish that, we're going to have to transition away from sub-minimum wage contracts. But that comes with big challenges, and I think that's what you're trying to get at as, okay, what are those challenges, what are the unintended consequences, and what are the solutions? So I'm gonna skip over the first of our three-pronged approach, because the second and third prongs addresses those specific questions that you have. The first one is what we're really excited to talk about because it's our success stories, but we'll save that for a later date and cut to the economic realities that I think we all have to face when we are confronting the transition away from 14C certificate usage. And anytime we try and avoid or dodge those economic questions or realities or labor forces that are at work, I think we invite some skepticism. I wouldn't say cynicism, but I would say we invite skepticism if we dodge those economic realities. So I think it's important that we address those, and I think it's great that you all are driving to that. So what we have done to address those issues is, first of all, with those individuals who had spent literally decades doing light assembly work within our workshops, who were not able to meet production standards that we would allow them for us to easily place in settings or job coach settings, for those individuals who struggled to meet production standards and did not, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing given all the phone ringing, so I hope you can still hear me. We offered alternatives to work. If they wanted to engage in alternative experiences, we offered volunteer opportunities at Meals on Wheels, at local food banks. They participate in music programs, in dance programs, in theater programs. We have this amazing community ambassadorship known as Greenville Greeters, they've gone to events hosted by Microsoft, by Michelin, by the NC2A. It's a fabulous program. And so we've seen that individuals who were struggling to meet production standards and only were doing light assembly because it's simply what we placed in front of them for decades, that they found belonging and purpose and learning and enriched experiences through these alternatives. Now, the other group is really where the rubber meets the road. It's those individuals who struggle to meet production standards, but indicate that they want to work, that they want to earn a paycheck. And here, time is the key. When we closed for COVID, I was ready to do an immediate stop on our 14C, and though our board voted to phase out sub-minimum wage contract work, they helped me see the value in providing a transition plan so that we could build up more enclaves and job coaching opportunities. And so we recently renewed our 14C certificate, not in an effort to keep individuals within our four walls earning sub-minimum wage for the rest of their lives, but to allow us the time to transition. And so with that third most difficult group, what we're trying to do is provide customized employment efforts. We are developing a real career prep curriculum, our own curriculum, to help individuals overcome some of the social barriers that really hold them back from competitive employment, and providing truly individualized support so that these individuals who express a desire to work but struggle to meet production standards can, with enough time, effort, and resources,
30 seconds,
find
30 seconds.
Thanks. Find the employment they're looking for. So really for us, it's the three-pronged approach. First, move everyone out of our four walls who can meet production standards. They should be working somewhere else. We were contractually incentivized to not make that happen. We've undone that and we've moved them out. The other two groups were either providing truly enriching experiences or customized approaches to helping them find jobs. And so that's our approach. Love to speak more about that when time allows, but thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate the information.
Yes, sir.
All right. That concludes the list of folks who we were calling. As was indicated, we do have Lisa and I believe it's Widener. If I'm wrong about that, please correct me. And Mason Thomas on the phone with us still. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And Lisa, did I
Here.
get your last name right? I apologize.
You did, Widener.
Okay, good. So with regard to what we're talking with today, is there anything that you were wanting to have input on?
I did not, but I think Mason does.
Okay, Mason, are you still there?
I am.
Mason, is there anything that you would like to provide us information on?
Sure. So I have a statement from Senator Shealy, who's the author of S533, and
Okay.
wanted to let everyone know that she firmly stands behind eliminating sub-minimum wages for the state, and that everyone should be able to work and live with dignity, which means bringing South Carolina into the 21st century. Last year, as was mentioned earlier, United States Commission on Civil Rights issued a report endorsing the repeal of Section 14C certificates. So this is a civil rights and a human rights issue. And phasing that out is important to us as a state. 6 states have already eliminated their participation in this program, with another 11 that have introduced legislation to that effect. We have the support of the governor, the superintendent of education, members of the General Assembly, and the public to be able to do this, to bring folks in these programs into integrated employment, being paid above, at minimum wage or above it. And finally, Senator Shealy just wanted to thank everybody that signed up to give information at this hearing, given the short notice that was provided for this emergency hearing. And look forward to working with you all on this. Of course, there's a lot of conjecture and talk on both sides of it, but we hope that information, both benefiting the providers, but also benefiting the people that they're providing these services to, kind of comes out in full committee this coming Thursday. And we look forward to seeing the legislation move on through the legislative process and hopefully being signed by the governor in short order.
Okay. Thank you, Mason. I appreciate that, and thank the senator on our behalf for providing us that statement. Okay. Is there any input? There's nobody else on the phone, correct, at this point, or am I leaving somebody out? Okay. Anyone, any input from staff with regard to this particular issue that we need to be aware of? Okay, not hearing anything from staff. Okay. Anything then, that will conclude the informational section of this meeting. So would recognize any member of the commission for any business at hand at this point in time.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Rawlinson.
Yes,
I did receive calls from 2 executive directors this afternoon.
Yes, ma'am.
One was Don Johnson in Florence, and the other was Ryan Way in Manning. Both of those executive directors, when we talked through the bill and talked through, where things were, they were both fine with the bill, especially with the transition plan. Both of those organizations have worked to actually leave the minimum wage, the sub-minimum wage situation behind and move to a minimum wage payment situation in their facilities. There are obviously some contracts that they have in place that, where they put together things in their workshops and that kind of thing for companies that will have to be renegotiated and that kind of thing. But they are prepared to do that. Both of those agencies are. And like I said, those are the only 2 that I have heard from this afternoon. But I did want to give that feedback that both of them say that they can survive this situation by moving through the transition period.
Thank you. Any further input from any member of the commission?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things we need to realize here. One is everybody that doesn't have a job when this happens in a year from now is going to survive. That's not a point about whether they'll survive or not survive. They're obviously going to survive. The point is, what do we do with people with profound disabilities that want to work but cannot meet certain standards for production? And the reality is we haven't heard anything here today that says exactly what they're going to do about that. We have 1,000 people pre-COVID that were working this way, and nobody has any plan today as to how to handle that. And I hope this commission has a wonderful plan to do it, but they don't because they haven't presented it. So we have to realize that these people are, I mean, it is absolutely unfair to say that this harms and discriminates against anybody. All they're trying to do with 14C is try to give people an opportunity to work, which I've stated for years on this county commission that I was on, that we need to give more people with disabilities opportunities to work. And that's all this does. And keep in mind, it's profound disabilities. Most people that work for minimum wage and higher. But it is an opportunity to work, and I wish that people did. Somebody talked to us today. I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna shut up. But somebody on this commission said today that people have a right to employment. I wish that was true. They don't have a right to employment. They don't have a right to employment. People have an opportunity to work. Employers have a right to hire somebody if they want to, and I hope and pray they will, but they don't have to. There's no right to employment in America. You don't have a right to employment. So just keep that in mind, anybody that thinks that this discriminates, because it does not discriminate. If they don't want to work, they don't have to work. This is just people that want to work and want to contribute to society. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, which commissioner was that speaking? They didn't identify themselves.
I'm sorry, Stephanie, you broke up there. I couldn't understand you.
No, this is Lisa with Senator Alexander's. I didn't know who that was speaking. They didn't identify themselves.
I'm sorry. I thought I saw Stephanie's. It might be back. So that was Commissioner Malfris, Ms. Widener.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize, Stephanie. That would be why I didn't recognize what you were saying.
That's okay. This is Commissioner Rawlinson. I disagree with. I think we all have a right to go seek employment. And I think that that's important, that we offer opportunities for these folks. But Barry, I believe that this transition plan is going to develop that process, because we don't know we don't know what kind of opportunities can come out of this. I think it's silly for us to encourage someone to stay back in a process that was created 20 years ago. We are moving forward, and just like our agency is moving fee for service, it's time for us to allow, and not allow even, because we don't allow, but us to encourage other agencies and other organizations to also move forward and to look at new ways and new ideas. We can't stay stuck in these old patterns of work. There are plenty of people who can seek other opportunities. I ran a program many years ago at Bruce Hospital, and we took high school students, and they were from our special needs area. And we taught them to roll silverware. We taught them to wash dishes. And these were just high school students. And these kids got real jobs in the public sector when they left my program. And I believe programs like that actually benefit these individuals who would like to work. And if they are in a profound situation, like Tyler said, they offer them opportunities where they can go into the communities and these enclaves and do other things to their ability. And I don't like to use, as you all know, I don't like to use the word disability. I prefer differently abled. But I like to see that we are encouraging them to be differently abled and to go find and seek those opportunities in the public sector, rather than being hid away in these back rooms, doing these menial tasks. Like, what good's it going to do? We want people to progress. And if they're sitting there pushing one button for 40 years, what is it doing for this person? Is it helping this person progress? Let's encourage these folks, and let's find ways, and let's work with this task force to find ways to do that. And I think it's important for DDSN to look at that as a whole. And like I said, we just disagree on that, Barry, but I think we've got to be a little bit more open-minded, because we're asking folks in the community to also be open-minded when it comes to fee for service. So we've got to also be willing to be open-minded about looking at other opportunities and other ways of doing things.
Well, this is an entirely different subject than fee for service, but I understand what you're saying. But But I just want it to be, I like Ralph said today, the number one thing I heard today from him was that we need to track what is going to happen to these people over the time, and they need more time than 2 years to make this happen. We could at least make this a 3 or a 5 year plan instead of a 2 year plan to make this happen, so that they would have more time to transition these people. That's the very least we should consider, is asking them to have more time to transition.
I understand that it is a 3-year plan.
That's my understanding as well.
Well, it should be at least.
As well.
Well, we just need to track and see what happens to them over that time after this 3-year period, because I may be wrong about what's going to happen to them, but I sincerely believe that I'll be right. But I won't be able to talk about that now because I won't be in the commission 5, 7, 10 years from now. So, but we just want people to understand the unintended consequences that's going to occur with this, or what some of us believe, some people, not just me, some people and providers and everything else believe is going to happen with this situation. Because again, we're talking about profoundly disabled people, not people that work for minimum wage, and the majority of them do, and we understand that. And I'm thankful for all of them, regardless of what they work for or how much they work for. The fact that they work is dignity, and they need dignity very badly. But I really don't want to talk about this anymore.
Does anyone else?
This is Commissioner Miller, and I'll just say to Commissioner Rollinson, well said.
Yeah. All right. Any additional things to be brought up at this time? Does any commissioner wish to make any motions with regard to the Senate bill?
Well, I said, this is David Thomas. I had said earlier that I asked for the meeting to receive information and just make sure that we understood as best we could consequences, and whether the consequences were negative to a degree that they could be mitigated, or if, as a policy decision, the legislature says, well, whatever the consequences are, we think the issue is so significant that we think the federal the federal, I don't want to call it a loophole, the federal vision, thank you, should just be done away with. I'd heard some strange things coming out of D.C. as far as the $15 an hour minimum wage, Mr. Chairman, that some folks, some elected officials were saying that if we can't afford $15 an hour, you shouldn't be in business paying less than that. That's kind of a radical position to take. But anyway, maybe as a policy decision, that's where the legislature ends up. In which case, fine. But we've done what we should do, and that is make sure that there was full disclosure as best we could tell. So down the road, a year from now, 2 years from now, if there is an outcry, at least the DDSN Commission has made clear that we have looked at this, we broadcast the information, we allow public comment, and that's all we can do. We're not in business to pass the legislation. I don't think we're in business to approve or disapprove unless it's a major thing that we have been dealing with, such as fee for service, and then you could see taking a position on a piece of legislation. But I think my own view of it, Mr. Chairman, on the bill itself, I probably, if I'd still been in the Senate, would have voted for it. I might have voted for some amendment to have done something that might have dealt with possible downside. But I think it's a good bill, basically. I understand where these proponents are coming from, and I have nothing negative to say against the legislation. It's all about possible downside and disclosing that to the legislature, making sure they see that we have done our job to say, here's something you should consider. So that's it from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with regard to any, again, and because I think we said we were going to hold off till we got the information. So does anybody want to make motions?
I think that's a great way to say it, David, and I appreciate your input. I think that was very valid what you said there, David.
Okay. All right. Anything further with regard to Senate Bill 533? Ben? Okay. Hearing nothing, then would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, I heard Commissioner Thomas first, and I heard Commissioner Malfris second. I was going to treat Commissioner Malfris as the second, if that's acceptable to him.
Fine. Thank you. Parent.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Mark, if you will shut down the broadcast, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.